Welcome to part 1 of the CostX training video series. In part 1 we will demonstrate how CostX can measure from 2D drawings and show some handy tools that will help you create a faster, smarter and more accurate estimate. Firstly, let's look at the CostX sidebar, which is located to the left hand side of the screen, where we'll see two main tabs at the top relating to the two views within CostX. Currently we are in the dimension view, which is where the on-screen measurement takes place. There is also a costing view, which we will touch on in part 2 of the CostX training video series. In the dimension view, there are two sections to the sidebar: a drawing section, which we will look at first, and a dimension group section, which we will look at later. Within the drawing section, we have a list of drawings which have already been loaded into the CostX building. We have arranged these into folders such as architecture, MEP, structural, and then subfolders within those. You can manage these different ways. So the first way is to change the properties by double clicking on one of the drawings, let's say this PDF for example. Here we have the drawing properties and we can change anything we would like in terms of the name or which folder it's allocated to. We can also change its scale and we can also change the default measure mode. We can also manage our drawings a different way. So if I head to my drawings tab and select manager, this brings up a list of every single drawing that is loaded into the building. As you can see, these have already been allocated into their folders and they already have their names and they've already got scales applied to them. If I wanted to manage a multiple set of drawings, I can do so by selecting whichever ones I want to manage and then selecting edit, and here I can change which folder these all go into. I can create a new folder that they go into, and I can also select the default measure mode for those drawings as well. So whether you would like to manage your drawings as a whole and looking at multiple drawings to look at, or whether you want to do them singularly, you can do so by those two means. Adding drawings in CostX is simply a matter of opening the drawings ribbon and clicking on the add button. CostX supports a huge range of drawing files, including CAD, PDF and image files, as well as BIM. Throughout this video, we'll be working with three main 2D drawing files. Firstly, a DWG file, which is capable of being rich in intelligent content, allowing CostX users to leverage this intelligence to extrapolate easy and fast measurements. Next, we have vector-based PDF file here, which still contains some intelligence but to a lesser level. Finally, the third file we'll be working with is a simple image file, also referred to as a raster file. It could be a JPEG, a TIFF, or other common image files, or you can get raster PDFs too. This does not contain any level of intelligence, but of course we can still measure from it quickly and easily within CostX. Note that as each drawing is opened, in the full version of CostX, it appears on a tab below the ribbon. Double-clicking on the tabs opens up each drawing in a separate window which can be resized and positioned anywhere on screen. With all drawing types, we can zoom in and out by rolling the mouse wheel forward and backwards, or pan by simultaneously clicking down the mouse wheel and moving the mouse. BIM files are covered in part 3 of the CostX training video series. For more information on drawing files and suggestions to optimize their layout and content, please look at our drawing file optimization document. Before starting a new takeoff, we have the option to display the scale and calibration factors of each drawing if required, helping identify those that may not yet be set correctly. Let's take a look at our vector PDF file. If there are some lines that you're struggling to see against the white background, you can actually change it to black by using this tool. It depends on which you prefer, but you can switch between the two. We can see that this drawing has already been calibrated to a scale, but what we're going to do is just remove this so that we can actually show you the process of how to get the correct calibration and scale for your drawings. Okay, so this has been set to a scale of 1:1, just taking it right back to its original state. And the calibration is at 1. So what we're going to do is just check that this is at the incorrect scale. So what we can do is find a known straight measurement. So I've got one here, which I'm going to use, but I need to actually rotate the drawing. So I'm going to right click and then select rotate, and then I just need it rotated by 90 degrees. And there I have my straight line to measure from. Now we can see this is 128.43 meters. So I'm going to use my measure distance tool, and I'm going to select the corner there, go to the end, and we can see quite clearly that it thinks that area or that measurement is half a meter long. We know it's not, so we can tell that that's the incorrect distance. So we can press escape to remove that tool, and now what we're going to do is actually calibrate the drawing. So I'm going to select my calibrate x-axis tool up here. You can choose calibrate y-axis if it was a vertical line, but because ours is horizontal, we're going to select this. So I'm just going to drop my cursor. Hopefully you can see there that it's actually clinging to the corner, so it knows where to start my line, and it's just going to go across to the end there, and I can simply put in here what the actual measurement is going to be. In this case, we need to put in 128,430. There is an option here to apply the factor to the y-axis as well. I'm going to keep this selected, but if you did have a drawing where the scales were going to be different, you might have a section drawing, for example, which has a couple of details on, and they each have separate scales. You might have to use a separate axis measurement for your calibration. In this case we don't, so I'm going to leave it ticked and press OK. Okay, and now what we can do is we can actually use our measure distance tool to check that measurement and make sure it's okay. Yep, I'm happy with that. I can press escape. Alternatively, we can actually amend this through the properties. So if I was to double click on to this drawing, you can see that we've got the option to change the scale. Now, if I come over here and zoom in, we can see it's actually set to 1 to 250. We can see there that actually the calibration has picked that up. So if we wanted to, we could have double clicked on here and selected 1 to 250 there. But I quite like the accuracy of actually doing the calibration myself. Working with layers is another great feature that is available in CostX. Layers are another level of intelligence added into the drawing by the designer. Most DWG drawings and some vector-based PDFs will have layers. Vector PDFs with no inbuilt layers now automatically get layers generated from the various types and colours of geometry. Image files, also known as raster files, will not contain any layers, however. To see a list of layers, go to the CostX sidebar and click on the Layers tab. We can see there are a lot of names here that may not properly describe their layer contents. However, we don't need to know the layer naming convention because in CostX we can simply turn off the layers visually. Notice as we move the cursor around the drawing, the cursor is connecting to the various lines and highlighting them in orange. We can also hold down the Shift key, which will highlight all lines in the same layer to give us a preview of what we're about to turn off. So if we wanted to turn off the roof canopy item, for example, we just hover over it, click, and then it's out of the way. Through this, we can clean up the drawing and make it easier to measure from. To turn all the layers back on, you can just click Show All. We can also invert the layers if required. Say we only wanted to see the roof canopy. Instead of turning off every single layer, we can just, again, click on the roof canopy to turn it off, and then go up and click on the Invert button, and now the roof canopy is the only layer we see. In the dimension group section, we have a list of dimension groups categorised into hierarchical folders. Currently, these are in an element format, but we can categorise however we require. When we start a new building, we can add dimension groups as we go from scratch. This is quite simple to do. Simply select the dimensions ribbon and click the Add button. A dialog window comes up where we can enter a variety of important details. Firstly, the name of the new dimension group, and then the folder name with a subfolder if required that you want it to be sorted into. The measurement type is the type of item you wish to measure, for example, area, length, etc. Then the default display is the figure that you wish to display in the dimension group list. The multiplier is used for a dimension group that would need to be multiplied by a number. For example, if measuring an apartment that has the same layout for 12 stories of a building, we could apply a default multiplier of 12. The default height represents the height you wish to be applied to the dimensions group, and the default offset can be used for items such as windows, where the offset is the height between the drawing level and the base of that item. CostX dimension groups also contain a width field, which can be set as a default and used in formulas for quantity calculations. There are also some colour and hatching options. We can change the colour of our positive dimensions by opening the drop-down menu and choosing a different colour. If the colour of choice is not included in the list, then we simply scroll down and click on the Custom option, which will bring up a window displaying a colour palette for more specific settings. This also applies to the negative dimensions. Finally, we have custom quantities. If we were measuring something like steel, here we can apply a unit of measurement for the steel weights. CostX supports an unlimited number of custom extended property fields within dimension groups to allow for extra calculations during takeoff. These quantities can reference other fields or even be pre-filled to automate calculations as we measure. We shall explore these custom fields later in this video. When all properties have been set, just press Insert. However, we don't need to create a new list every time we start a new building. We can set up standard dimension groups that will then always appear when adding a new building, or we can add a new building based on a previous building and use the existing dimensions groups list from a pre-existing building, like this particular list here. We can have multiple template lists set up for different types of buildings. Finally, the last part of the task pane is the dimension section, which shows the separate measured dimensions that make up a quantity in the selected dimension group. Here there is also the opportunity to right-click and show dimension, which will take you to the drawing and the actual dimension measured in relation to that dimension displayed in that list. When we're ready to start our takeoff, make sure we've selected the Drawings tab. When we hover over the drawing, we can see the lines now highlight in green when the cursor connects to them instead of orange. Now, before we start measuring, we need to select the relevant dimension group. We want to measure an area from the lounge, so we'll just select the lounge dimension group. Note the quantity already in here is 284 meters squared. So as before, DWG files can be very rich in intelligent content. With a DWG, designers may include continuous lines known as polylines around enclosed areas on the drawing. This means we can use that polyline information to highlight that area by holding down the L key, and with a click of a button, measure the enclosed area. We'll notice that as we've clicked, our lounge dimension group has been populated with a quantity of an extra 38 square meters. So it's really easy to get accurate quantities in no time at all. If we now move over to our PDF, we can also use the vector lines in this drawing to measure areas with what's called quick point function. We can also use the standard technique to click around the required area. We can see here the cursor is connecting to the lines on the drawing, and we refer to it as the sticky cursor. We can just click around these lines and press enter to complete the room dimension and populate that dimension group with another area. CostX also makes it easy to measure around a curved area. You just hold down the mouse button and drag around the curve, and then we've picked up that area quite easily. Now let's move to the image file. As mentioned before, this isn't an intelligent file source. Previously, we've been measuring in line mode, which creates the sticky cursor effect. However, in the image file, we'll measure in point mode as there are no vector lines. With point mode, we can just trace over the top of the drawing. When measuring an area, we just go over the lines like so. Once completed, pressing enter finishes the area, and once again, we see that being added to our dimension group. If required, we can turn our angle snap button on. This means that when we extend the lines out to the next point, they snap to incremental angles of 15 degrees. Just like this. We can also turn on point mode instead of line mode for a DWG or PDF if required. We can also turn this function on while in line mode instead of point for our DWG and PDF files if preferred. Moving on, this DWG drawing is of a university campus. The gross floor area has been measured for some of the floors, but not the second floor, however. This is no issue, as we can save time by copying and pasting the measured dimensions from one drawing to another. To do that, we need to first select the measured dimensions we want to copy. We have a few different options to do this. First is to click on the GFA dimension group, and this will highlight it on the drawing. Now you can either right click an area and select copy, or the second option is you can press Ctrl and C as you would in any other Windows environment. Now we just need to go to our second floor drawing, and again either right click to paste or Ctrl and V. It does help if you do this over a reference point, so for example I will use the top left corner here. However, if you haven't used a reference point, that is okay, as you can simply pick up the area and move it around. You can also adjust it accordingly to fit the new drawing more accurately. You can rearrange the dimensions by moving, rotating and mirroring the dimensions however required. In this example we don't need to, but if we did, you just hover over the yellow points of the edit controls and click to mirror the image. We can also measure negative dimensions if required. So here in this university drawing, we've already measured the whole area, but we need to deduct the void for the stairs. It's very easy in CostX. Just go up to the CostX ribbon and click on the negative button. This will then turn on the negative measurement tool. In line mode, we just measure the stair void. Now when we look at the dimension group, we can see the area quantity has decreased, as the negative measurement has been deducted. If we go to the Dimensions tab, we can see that particular negative measurement here. If we want to see both the negative and positive areas that we have measured on the drawing, we can just click on the Both button up here once more. Measuring lengths is very similar to measuring areas in that we have two specific modes, line mode and point mode, that can be used to measure with. With our PDF, say we want to measure the exterior walls, we can just select the dimension group and then again highlight the entire length using the polyline tool and measure the length with one click. Additional segments could be added to the length dimension by holding the Control key down and clicking on the required additional lines in turn. As we looked at before, we can turn on the negative measurement tool and take out the doorways like so. If we just go to the dimension group where we measured those lengths and hover over it, we can not only see the length, but we can also see other measurements like the wall area. These secondary quantities will be of great significance when we get to the workbook in part 2 of the CostX training video series. Now the wall area measurement is coming from the height that we have given this dimension group. So here the height we have given is 3.8 meters, which was indicated when we set up the dimension group. If we click into the dimensions pane, we can see both the positive and negative dimensions that have been added, with the negative representing the doors. These have a default height of 2.13 meters applied. With CostX, we can change the height here by right-clicking, selecting Modify Dimensions and Change Height. If we had multiple negative dimensions and we wanted to change the heights of all of them, we can select a group of them and do that too. In order to check the wall areas, we can use this great function in CostX called View in 3D. On the ribbon, just click on the button and it will show us all the selected dimensions on that particular drawing in 3D. This can be done in image and DWG files too. It's a great tool to visualize our takeoff. There is a lot more we can do with our measurements in CostX. To start with, let's create a new dimension group. Add a name of Window Type 1. Add it to the folder of Windows and Exterior Doors. Set the measurement type to Length. A default display set to Count. Default multiplier we will leave set to 1. Moving on to the height of the window, we can apply a default height of 1.8 meters and a default offset of 0.4 meters. Then in the Extended Properties section, let's add lintels. And then apply a unit of measurement of length for the newly added property. Once we have completed all the properties for the new dimension group, we can click on the Measured Dimensions tab at the top. In this window, we can further define the formula for the relevant properties. In this instance, we need to apply a formula for lintels by clicking on the ellipsis button adjacent to this field, which will open the Expression Editor window. In the Expression Editor window, we can double-click on the length dimension field and then add 150 mm to allow a 75 mm overhang on either end of the door frame. click the Close button and notice the formula that we have just applied has been carried into the lintels field. Now we have completed all the dimension group properties, we can therefore proceed to click Insert and measure the windows here. Notice that now when we hover the mouse cursor over the measured windows, it doesn't just show the count, length and wall area of the window, but it also gives us the lintel length as well. If we hover the mouse cursor over the dimension group itself, we notice all the secondary quantities in the yellow hint box. CostX also allows us to measure counts where required. Let's go to our electrical PDF drawing. Say we want to measure some pendant lights like these ones. First, we select the dimension group. Now, if we go to count this, as you can see on the drawing, there are rather a lot of these, which I could count individually. However, we do have an auto count feature which will speed up this takeoff. If I invert my layers so that I have only the pendant lights in view, I can select my auto count tab and then select capture. I then drag my mouse across the item that I wish to count, and then notice a thumbnail or sample of the image I just took is now in this box. When I click search, CostX will now scan the entire drawing for any other image that looks the same as my captured image. When I'm happy that it's captured everything on the drawing that I would like, I can simply click on the Save Accepted button and it has added this number of lights to my total in the dimension group. This feature can also be used for an image file. If you are completing a mass count in a CAD drawing, we have another quick way to do this as well. Let's go to our DWG and select another dimension group for some lights. If we look on the drawing, we can see that these are the lights I wish to measure. Now, as this drawing has a higher level of intelligence, we don't need to capture an image. We simply use our Shift key whilst hovering over or near the CAD block that I wish to measure and click to count it. I can then hover near the next block and hold Shift and Control, which will highlight every identical block across the drawing, and then I can click and it will have counted them all and added the total to my dimensions group. CostX also allows us to overlay two drawings on top of one another and compare them using the Compare Drawings button. Firstly, with one drawing open, press the Compare Drawings button and select Compare Drawing to another drawing. Then select the drawing to compare from the drop-down menu. The two drawings are then overlain. The colours of these two layers can be adjusted in CostX options if you wish. We can zoom in and out to examine the differences more closely, and by holding down the left button, we can reposition the top image to exactly align the two images. We can also adjust the colour intensities. This allows us to see where the differences have occurred. You can also, like in this example, compare a different format of drawing overlain on another one. We can also print this screen if we require by selecting the option Print Drawing Window to Report, like so. This is an excellent way to keep a visual record of the changes for reference. This tool is especially useful when dealing with revisions, where you can overlay the drawings and quickly and easily identify where the changes are. To learn more about revisioning, please refer to part 4 of the CostX training video series. When we measure dimensions, we have the option to display a label every time we measure an area, length or count. We can turn these on and off if required by clicking on the Labels option in the ribbon. If we wanted to change them from numbers to something more relevant, we can view and change them in the Dimensions tab. So if we open that up, we can just click on this one, for example, and change it to Window 1. And then we can see it's changed here on the drawing as well. Within CostX options, we can change the labels to either display the dimension name or simultaneously display the dimension name, quantity and unit, or just simply display the quantity and unit. We also have some additional features within the CostX dimension view that can help organise and review our takeoff. Firstly, we can adjust the decimal places displayed for the dimension groups by clicking on the drop-down arrow here and changing the decimal places as required. Furthermore, we can switch on a colour indicator adjacent to the dimension group to allow us to see which dimension group is relevant to which section of the drawing. We also have the option to display multiple dimension groups simultaneously. We can even choose one of the selected dimension groups and continue measuring into it while displaying the others at the same time. We also have the option to show a legend. Simply by clicking here, we can turn the legend on and it will show details of the selected dimension groups, including the quantity if required. Another great feature is the ability to add markups or notes to the drawing. Say we wanted to make a note on the windows here that they needed to be triple glazed as a new variation. Ensure the markup button is turned on and then just right click on the drawing. Select Create Markup and then type in our special instruction about the window. That note will remain there for anyone else who might require it. This concludes our video on part 1 of the CostX training video series, focusing on 2D measurement.